Hi, I'm Nancy Feth, and I'm here with my friend Ann Fleming to talk about wellness and holistic living. And I'm so excited you decided to join us, Ann, because we've known each other for quite some time, and we've both been in the wellness space. And you just are talking about some really cool things these days in terms of aging well. So, welcome to our session today, and I can't wait to hear a little bit about how you got into it and what you're passionate about in terms of holistic living.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. So tell me how you got into it. Like, I know you have a background in all kinds of things. You've been doing this for a long time. I know about your Juice Plus product because I take that. I know you do this beautiful growing plants hydroponically. I know you've been in integrative nutrition. So where do you want to start?
I'll just start with sort of the journey. I really got into this about 15 years ago, and it was through the product Juice Plus, and only because my sister kind of dragged me into it and said, this is really cool. And with the company educates you, which is really nice, about why Juice Plus is, for those that you don't know, it's just a fruit and vegetable concentrate, but it's a really high quality product. It's one of the first ones that was ever done. And I was so intrigued because I'd always come at health and eating from a calorie standpoint. I was athletic, but I was, definitely prone to being a little overweight. And so I was always worried about how to count calories and how to, worry about that in my life, and not worrying at all really about the nutrition. And that's such an important part of it, because the calories are less important if you're eating the right things. And it leads you to eat better things and less of the bad stuff when you get on the right track. But anyway, so I was actually still on the rep for Juice Plus, but after sort of having done that for 5 years, I was really curious to know, all right, why does this work? How does this work? What does food do? I had no idea that it had the capacity to heal as it does, and reverse some of these awful diseases that we have. And so I did a little health coaching kind of 101 school with a place called Wellness Forum in Ohio. And then I did the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is out of New York. That was about a year course. And that's basically integrating all kinds of different, opening your eyes to how many different ways you can eat. And it's really, everybody is so different. So you really do need to understand that there's a lot of different ways to wellness. And then finally, I went to a Functional Nutrition Alliance, and that was another year of really understanding how some of these really bad diseases start and why. And that was really interesting to me, because I think most of us think that you just get struck by lightning. You get cancer, you get this, you get that, because out of the blue, there's no reason. Well, there's a reason for everything. Generally, it's you have some predisposition, but that does not mean you're going to get it. It really matters what your lifestyle is like, and taking care of a whole bunch of different things. And you can get away with a lot of stuff until you're about 40. And then, everything starts to catch up with you. So the good news is it's really never too late. You could always make changes, even, in your 60s and 70s. But the earlier, at least, you have an awareness of what's going on, you'll make better choices.
I love what you're saying, because a few years ago I heard something to that end where they were talking about the fact that people go, well, it's in my family, or it's my history, or any of that kind of stuff, like I'm going to get it because whatever. And the point they were making was, well, part of the reason, even though you have that genetic disposition, disposition, right? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
For it.
Or
A lot of
predisposition.
predisposition, thank you, is because a lot of the times in families, they keep doing the same thing year after year and generation after generation. So you have all these other things that you tie to choices you make around lifestyle that have all these other things attached to them, right? It's not just about getting nourishment. It's like, well, I'm Italian, and I'm Polish, and I'm Irish, and I'm German, but the Italian is what I grew up in. And it's like anything, the solution is food. We come together, we gather, we eat more, we sit at the table, and so looking at that and saying, okay, so what's the best part of that I loved, which is the connection with each other around gathering. And it doesn't have to be so much about the food. Not that we'll ever get rid of the food, but we could make different choices. So I love what you're saying about that. It's like, it's not like it's a sentence that we have to live into with full acceptance. Like, there's things we can do to make a difference.
Definitely. And you can still have your wonderful gatherings, but the 80% of the other times you're not doing that, you could eat in a much, a way that's going to benefit your health and longevity.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, thank you, full permission to still have my
Definitely. I mean, yeah, you got to have fun.
bread, have the bread or the pasta, like that's been one of the hardest things to cut out, but it's been the biggest benefit that I've noticed is cutting that. We'll get to that later in terms of some nutrition things you can do. So, in terms of wellness, like what you're talking about, you hit a couple of really thought leading areas that you were called to study. I know when we were growing up, I'm speaking sort of generationally, I think we're sort of the same age here. We were taught certain things about nutrition and health. And I remember, the 4 food groups or, this percentage of that and all that. And I must have tried every possible diet that was out there. I remember the Scarsdale diet. I just remember so many. I can't even name them all. And none of them seem to really work. And then in the last 10 years, I've noticed there's like a whole shift away from dieting to sort of making major food shifts in terms of categories and the percentage of what we eat affecting us differently. And I love what you said at the beginning here, that every body is different. So what works in terms of how we choose to eat and live is different too. Can you say more about that?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, some people can eat bread and pasta and that's not a problem for them. Other people have, you can have pasta and bread, and gluten can affect you in different ways. It can affect your memory. It can affect your gut, and how that works. It can affect how you feel, so if you're lucky enough not to have any problem with that, that is great. Even I will say though, you should limit bread and pasta in general. It's not a healthy way to go.
Mhm,
It should be small amounts in general, but
mhm,
I think it's a fair amount of experimentation in terms of, if I've got somebody, and it's easier if you've got a problem, and then you can sort of adjust, say, all right, this is the problem, this is when it started, what makes it better or worse. And then often I would, try some form of elimination diet. Generally, the top 3 things to get rid of, first of all, would be, dairy, gluten, sugar, to see if that makes you feel a little better. Because getting those out of the diet really, generally makes everything work better.
mhm,
It doesn't mean you have to do it forever, but it's a good way of sort of checking to see where the problem is.
mhm. And I notice for just personally, whenever I make any changes like that, suddenly I start to feel a shift. And then if I do add it back in, I don't feel the desire to have it. I mean, I'm talking more in terms of cravings and things. Like I used to have the sugar salt back and forth, when I was stressed, I would eat sugar, but then I needed to balance it because I had too much sugar. So I'd have salt. I was on this crazy nighttime thing. It's when the kids were small. I remember
Yeah.
doing that. And when I got really sick, it was my body was so out of balance. And the naturopathic doctor I work with at the time basically had me doing that, like eliminating sugar and flour and anything white and having way more vegetables and protein and she even put me on some enzymes and stuff. She had me do some cleanses and then had me on some enzymes. And that sort of jacked up my body so fast that before you knew it, I was losing too much weight. And I was noticing that like I felt great. I had a lot of energy, but I'm like, oh, when I'm laying on the floor at the gym doing a class and I can feel the bones in my hip, something is not right here. So that didn't work either, even working with her. And so what has been sort of the leveling agent for those of, for you and for those of us that want something but don't want it just to be a fad? We want it to be a lifestyle. Is it eliminating a category like that, or is it the addition of some other foods or the
It,
supplements that you're talking about?
yeah, it's very much, little by little in general. Unless you've got some kind of a huge issue that needs to be addressed immediately. So if you've
Yep.
got, some kind of nasty arthritis or a nasty stomach condition, then you might want to do something a little faster. But otherwise, I'm much bigger fan of going slowly, because you have to, what you want to adopt is something that's going to work permanently and that you're going to be able to live with permanently. So, taking things out, or lessening your amount that you're eating.
Mhm.
Um, so that it's like sugar is particular, and alcohol, while at the same time adding things in. You're adding your vegetables in, adding as many green things as you can stand in your day.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of smoothies, because you can get, basically get 2 servings of spinach in there and you won't even taste it. So,
And with my Italian background, we love vegetables. So any kind of vegetable was my parents and generations before them, grandparents and great grandparents were in the fruit and vegetable business. So it's sort of like I see a vegetable and there's not one I haven't liked as I met, along the
But
way.
you're unusual that
I
way.
know I'm unusual, and I talk about it as if it's like, oh yeah, just have more vegetables, and people are like, ew, like they can't even stand the taste of it.
No, and they don't know
So
how to cook them. They don't know how to buy them, and they don't know how to cook them. So that's part
yeah,
of, some of my coaching too, is trying to, I've got a client right now who's basically sort of doesn't really eat much except meat and potatoes. And I'm trying to, one quick, easy tip is to start with roasted vegetables, cut up a bunch of things, olive oil, salt and pepper, roast them for 20 minutes, and you can have them for that meal and leftovers. And that's a really easy way to start. But I think a lot of people don't know or like to cook vegetables. And I think I was in that category too. I've lived a lot of this myself. So I understand where people are coming from.
well, especially if people have had a lot of bad experiences with vegetables growing up, like depending on where you grew up and what your family would be serving and things. I mean, I remember my mother, her way of cooking broccoli was it was like wasn't green anymore when it was done. It was
Right.
kind of a gray green, and she threw olive oil all over it and it tasted good and lemon, but I like it when it just sort of steamed a little. It's got mostly crunch and a little bit of that, getting softer. I'll eat it the other way. I'll eat a whole bowl of it, but it's, I think, better for me. There's more nutrition left if I don't boil the heck out of it. So there's a lot of relearning, I think, for us that there's so many ways to cook vegetables and buying them healthy, not necessarily buying them canned or frozen like many of us might have experienced. And yeah, I love where you're going with that. So say more about like how you work with people in terms of creating new lifestyles that work and support either, I don't want to say necessarily curing a disease, but alleviating the symptoms of certain conditions that develop as we age. We were talking about aging before we got started today.
Yep. It's you basically take a sort of thorough health history and find out what, how they ate as a child, how they ate, as in their 20s, and what traumas have they had, have they been on a lot of antibiotics that can mess up your system. So you sort of have an idea of what you're dealing with. And then obviously the first thing is, what do they want to accomplish? So that's the number one thing. Is it weight loss? Is it, if they've got a stomach issue, if they got something that's not working properly? Are they fatigued? Are they not sleeping?
Mhm.
There's a bunch of things that people may come to me with. So you start with trying to figure out what's going to make them feel better the fastest, while at the same time educating them on kind of the pillars of what a healthy lifestyle should look like. And encouraging to make these changes little by little, and you really start week one with, all right, this is what I want you to do. Be whatever it is. Is it more water? Is it a little bit of exercise? And so I have people that come to me that are doing zero exercise, and
Mm.
that's a huge one. You have to be doing something. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you got to be moving, because
Mhm.
we're all a little too sedentary. So
Mhm.
I'll have them start, there.
Mhm.
And then try and add a vegetable a day, one more vegetable each day, so that you are at least, on the right path. And these leafy greens is just huge. If you could have some kind of a little salad,
Mhm.
because that's also what seems to be lacking.
Mhm. And when you're saying leafy greens, it's not just iceberg lettuce that has a little bit of green in it. It's
Right. It's
actually
as many varieties as you can find. There's some really great things out there that are mixed, and I like the tubs, even though I know they're not environmentally friendly, but they keep the lettuce in good shape. And it's got to be edible and appetizing, or you're not going to eat it.
Mhm.
But you throw in some arugula and some
Mhm.
of those all different green lettuces, and spring mix, and spinach, and it's really a wonderful thing. And the good news is you don't have to worry so much about the fat, because the fat is good. So, as long as it's a decent salad dressing, and then you can add avocados and things to make it more fun.
Mhm.
That changed salad eating for me, when I could add more fun things. I
Mhm.
liked it a lot better.
Well,
So I
it's
think before,
interesting.
again, coming from the calorie mentality, I was putting, low fat dressing, or, just something nasty on the bed of greens with some tomatoes and cucumbers. And it's just not,
Yeah.
it's just not appetizing.
Well, this summer we found ourselves like, since my husband was home, we were both home, everyone was home, sheltering in place and until things opened up. And then we took a while to get started in our next chapters too. So we were home longer. And we were sitting down and making salads, and we had so much fun. We would add things like blueberries and sometimes pistachios and crunchy. So you'd mix crunch and sweet and savory. And the lettuce is, like you say, I mean, arugula, he didn't used to like arugula at all. And now he actually likes it. And I just love the texture, the taste, so it just doesn't become bland and boring, you know, that we have some
Exactly.
creativity, and you know you're getting in what you need, because I guess the closer to it growing, the healthier it is versus us cooking it out and, you know, doing all stuff. With the exception of roasting. Roasting's really keeps a lot in there, I think, from what I've read and heard
Correct.
and stuff. Okay. So let's go into that space. I know you were talking about aging well, and you're kind of excited about this book that you found that you were jazzed about. I haven't ordered
Bring
it.
it up here.
I will order it. It might be Christmas presents to some of my relatives as well. So say more about what you're learning, or what's reinforcing what you've known about aging well.
I would say it's really reinforcing what I've known, and it's just in such clear language, and there's definitely some new. I'm trying to think of what's particularly new in here that was great. They mentioned CBD, which I think I told you, which is wonderful.
Mhm.
He's a fan of the intermittent fasting, and so he explains that a little bit. And we're just kind of experimenting with that a little bit. Basically, particularly when you're, and again, depends on what you need. I think for me, I need breakfast, but some people, it's sometimes better to let everything clear out, and it's very good to helping rejuvenate your brain. So if you've got some brain fog, or you've got, any kind of memory things as you get older, sometimes that intermittent fasting can be a really helpful tool.
Mhm.
And he talks about some other, supplementation. There's lots of good supplementation out there depending on what you need. So I remember when I first started with Juice Plus, like, oh, we don't need anything else. Juice Plus does it all, but
Yeah.
that does the fruits and vegetables part. But there's a lot of other wonderful things out there that are for specific things that may be happening in your body, and that's the kind of thing that a functional practitioner can help you with.
Mhm.
And I think his thing, what he's saying is similar to what I've said. These pillars, which are water and lots of plant foods and exercise and sleep,
Mhm.
and how to get you to sleep better.
Mhm.
So I would say those are the biggies.
Mhm. The thing you were saying about intermittent fasting had me think immediately of people I know that struggle with things like blood sugar, and how you manage that. How does that affect? Are those people able to do intermittent fasting, or is it just a food choice at the time? Or like, how does it work for people like that? Or does it not work?
I think it helps. The blood sugar is also the more about, with the carbohydrate content of things. And I think that's again, that's a journey, because you're going to, if you've got a blood sugar issue, or you're pre-diabetic, you for sure, you're probably eating out of balance. So the first thing that has to happen is you've got to figure out how to get your eating back in balance. And that takes some time. It doesn't happen, in a week or two. You're going to add things out, add things in, take some things out.
Mhm.
But I do believe intermittent fasting could help that. I'm just learning about it myself, so I'm not
Yeah.
as aware of how that would work for the blood sugar people. But I think, again, if your blood sugar is relatively in line, the intermittent fasting is not going to hurt it.
Mhm.
It's going to help, and it helps your body because it's not working all those other hours when you're fasting. It's recovering and repairing.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Yeah,
I
I
think
want to
that's
definitely learn more. I've heard a lot of people talking about it, and some people swear by it, and it's new to me. I mean, I never really, the only fasting I had in my experience was on, like Good Friday, and oh, it was Catholic, so we're not going to eat all day. And then when we do,
eat everything. Yeah.
it's like crazy. Yeah, so that's kind of cool. Well, that's good to know. It's like I'm definitely going to get the book, and I'm always looking for something new that is sustainable, that feels resonant with me. Like I find people can swear by something, but if it doesn't seem like, when I think about it, or I'm willing to try it, I don't even give it a second look. So what I love about what you're saying is he's very holistic, and I'm in that category. I mean, I'm into my 60s next year. And I look at it and I say, well, I'm feeling better than I felt in years. And for me, it has been a combination of doing more consistent exercise, drinking a lot more water, I do take CBD on a consistent basis, but I'm getting more sleep. I'm going to bed earlier by design. And when I sleep deeper. So I know that's helped the sleep stress cycle. But nutritionally, even with all the changes I've made, there's plenty of lifestyle things that keep me from eating properly. And I think the biggest hurdle that I want to see for myself is to really get good at planning and buying ahead of time and preparing so that when I'm not home to eat, I can take with me what I need. Because I find when I eat out a lot of times, I don't feel good. Like even places you think I'm not talking about nice restaurants. I always feel good.
Right,
Certain
right,
restaurants I could
right.
name that I always feel good when I eat there. But other places, like if you're grabbing something at these fast food places, and I won't name names, and I'm not talking about the terrible ones either, they have too much salt. That's my main thing I notice is I eat them and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so salty. I taste it right away. And I don't add any extra salt. So I know I don't want to say I struggle, but one of the things I was made aware of within the last decade was my blood pressure. And so I look at that and I'm like, well, I got to watch the salt for sure. And how do you do that when you're out, out
Yeah,
and about?
it's hard. It's
Yeah,
really hard.
yeah. And I think if we eat, there's something also about being more alkaline. Is there anything about that with eating more vegetables, like getting our blood to be more alkaline? Have you heard
Well,
about
yeah,
that?
yeah, you automatically you're going to do that. I mean, the acidic foods are all the dairy and the meats and the things like that. And then on the other side of it is everything green. So again, and it's hard. It's the stuff that we like the most is acidic.
Yeah.
The
Ice
alcohol,
cream.
all
Yum.
the cheese, all the fun stuff's over here on the acidic side. So you really need to try and compensate to balance it with as many fruits and vegetables as you possibly can get in.
So can I
Um,
still have my cheese if I'm good?
yeah, you can still like your cheese. Yeah, that's the thing. It's a totality of what you're doing. And one way to think about it too is you're trying to create resiliency in your body. And if you can create balance, then you're resilient to a lot of these other, you can afford to do some of this other stuff because your body is going to spring back much faster, be it from a cold or a weekend of no sleep or a partying weekend or travel or whatever it is you're doing. Um, so that's why, you want to try and get as balanced as possible.
I was just listening to something this morning. I do a meditation with an online app that I find really helpful. And after that, they have speakers, oftentimes meditation teachers and things. And the teacher was talking about the fact of how important it is to practice when things are going well. And I equate that to what you're saying, like eating well, getting that habit. So when crisis hits, you've got stuff to lean into,
And the
not to
habits.
just start when the crisis hits or when the diagnosis. Of course we're going to do that, but how different it would be if you had some consistent things that really help as your daily routine. And then
Exactly. I want to make sure you touched on a really important thing is the habits and creating the habits. Because it's, some of this stuff looks just insurmountable when you're looking at it. You think, how am I going to give that up? How am I going to change? How am I going to do this? But if you just commit to doing it, it becomes a habit and it's not nearly as hard as you thought it might have been.
Mhm.
I look at where I was even 5 years ago, how we ate. It's completely different now, and it hasn't been that onerous because we've been doing little by little, and it's become habits. And we actually like how we feel. We like what we're doing.
Mhm. Mhm. So what are the biggest takeaways that you would want people to know in terms of making healthy shifts to what they're typically doing and moving into a new way of being around wellness?
I would say watch the sugar would be huge. Um, and after having said that about the intermittent fasting, I think a healthy breakfast is for most people a really great place to start. I mean, I think because I think the intermittent fasting is almost down the road because if people are starting having their breakfast with like my latest client with a croissant or a bagel, I mean, it's just the worst thing you can do because there's no nutrition in it and your blood sugar goes skyrocketing and then you're crashing by 10:30 and you're hungry and tired. So you really need to have a good breakfast. And then the moving, keeping moving. Obviously aerobic exercise is nice, but you don't even need a lot. Half hour, a few times a week is good. But I'm a big fan of the Fitbits because it keeps you it gets you standing up. If been sitting for 3 hours or, you need to get up every hour. So that's big.
Mhm.
The sleep. which we have mentioned before, if you can't sleep, nothing can recover properly, and it puts you're just at a disadvantage. You're hungrier, you're tired, your mood is not as good. I
You don't
know I
make good
say, like,
choices. You don't make good choices.
yeah, you don't make good choices. And I say that like sleep is easy. I know sleep for some people is not easy, but there are lots of things you can do.
Mhm.
Um, and I basically mentioned everything else, but the vegetables, to add more vegetables in every day, and limiting alcohol. I mean, I love alcohol. My husband's in the wine business. We
Mm,
used to love having wine every single night at dinner, and we just can't anymore. It affects our sleep,
mhm.
so we're picking and choosing our nights, and that's just how we're making that choice because we feel better.
Yeah, and
Um,
one of the things about alcohol, I think that people don't realize is the amount of sugar. So it's not even just the alcohol that's affecting us, but most alcoholic drinks, wine, beer, cocktails have so much sugar. And you're drinking it and you're in that zone and you have another one and you don't realize how much extra carbohydrates essentially you're adding to your body. And that is just not only for loss, but blood sugar, sleep, everything else that you're talking about. It just I
exactly.
I try as well, and there's definitely times when it feels like I notice such a difference. I mean, I've gotten to the point now where not that I was a huge drinker before, I was always kind of a light drinker, but I might on a night that I'm going out and feeling like I'm celebrating, have a couple of drinks. And now I find even if I have one drink, I notice something the next day, like I don't sleep as well. I'm like, oh, come on, I want my wine or I want this.
I know,
But
and that's really unfair. No, that is really age related. You can get away with a lot more when you're younger, but when you sort of
yeah,
get to the late 50s and 60s, it's just you're weak. You got to keep upping your game.
yeah.
That's really the answer.
So I just try to pick, like, I'm very mindful where I might have before been able to do it during the week, but if I have to get up and have a meeting or go to work, it's like, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Exactly.
Because the
Exactly.
sleep, I mean, here's the thing, I want to put another plug in for sleep with you on that because I went for years not sleeping well. And now that I'm sleeping well, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. But what happens is as the day naturally starts to wane and the light shifting and everything, I'm getting tired earlier and I'm going to bed earlier naturally. Like my body is calibrated to the day
Yeah,
and to
it's
the
interesting,
rhythm.
isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've wanted to try to get to bed by 10 o'clock and I would push till 11, 12, 1, whatever. Now, last night it was like, oh, it's 9:30. I'm getting tired. I need to start getting ready. And I go to bed. I'm like, and the day before I got home and I was so tired, I said, I'm just taking a bath and I'm going to go to bed early. I was in bed by 9:30. And I
Feels
don't do this
great.
all the time, but the fact that you give yourself permission to shut everything down, let the to-do list stay and give that, I promise you, you will start to feel so much better just getting this sleep. So yes, and everything you're saying about that as sleep and wellness and eating right is just so, so important to just like aging well, as you're saying. So tell me anything you think we should touch on before we close that we might have missed?
I think I forgot the water piece.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I've just experimented on myself this in the last. I'm not good about drinking water because I don't get thirsty very often. But
Right.
I kept getting my recovery scores and my sleep apps were saying, not good. And I thought, what the heck? We got to bed early. I didn't have any alcohol, and I realized I was dehydrated. So that has affected my sleep. And that was really a revelation. I thought, wow. So the next 2 nights I made sure I had, my 8 glasses, and sure enough, but my recoveries were better both nights. So I think
Wow.
that, that's another thing. I mean, water it affects absolutely everything. It'll affect your pain in your joints. It'll affect how you look, your skin. It's amazing the things we don't realize that water does.
Mhm.
Um, wanted to mention that, but that's it.
And coffee
I think
doesn't
that's enough.
count as water. That's additional, right? That doesn't count. They're talking clear, clean water,
Yeah,
right?
tea does count,
Good.
but nothing else.
Yep. Yep. So water or tea.
Yeah.
And what about if you were drinking a glass and you threw in something like airborne? Does that count or that takes it away? Like those airborne.
I know what you're talking about. I know that there are things that are like, unfortunately, soda water, which I like, and I still will drink from time to time, tends to be acidic in the body. So that's not so, and it is not assimilated the same way as water. So those,
Even seltzer?
in seltzer, yeah. So, I mean, they're fine to drink for, for fun, but they're not supposed to, they shouldn't count as your water.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know.
So I don't know about that airborne. That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like when you're thinking, because sometimes if I feel like I'm getting a cold, I'll have one of those in
Yeah.
a bottle of water just to
I
get
think it probably counts somewhat. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. Maybe
I've
half,
heard
maybe
if your
half a
body has
point.
to process anything different than it just doing its thing, it doesn't count or something. But I mean, I don't know if that's real or not. I think it's certainly better than drinking nothing.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
because I think people get tied up with that. Well, I'm gonna drink water and keep putting these flavor things in, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking
Right.
about plain water.
And water.
Okay. So how can people get in touch with you, Anne, if they want to work with you and they want to learn more and just kind of make some lifestyle changes?
Well, my website is Anne Fleming Wellness.
Mhm.
And then phone, they can call me 617-733-5126 to make an appointment. And I have my website also, I think, is Fleming Wellness.
Oh, good.
So,
Okay.
it's Anne Fleming Wellness is my
Okay.
website. So
It's all together, Anne Fleming Wellness.
they can find me
Okay.
there.
Perfect. And we'll put this right below once we write a little description about this and put the video up on YouTube and Facebook and things like that. So thank you
Great.
so much. It's just been a pleasure. And I feel so invigorated because some of the things you're saying I've already been doing. And then there's some growing edges for me to explore. I am going to commit to getting off this call and ordering that book because I still haven't. We talked about it a week ago, so I'm going to get it.
And you
And
could get them secondhand too, or so
yeah,
that's another great thing.
I wonder if you can get it on like Kindle or the MacBook one or whatever,
And I don't know about that, and then I'll tell you, I'm a big fan of my library and and you could get things, you can get things digitally, which is wonderful on your iPad from your library. I don't know if you know about
Oh, I
that,
didn't
but
know
that's a
that.
really wonderful thing. The Old Colony Network, it's an app called Libby. And if you've got a library card, you put your library card in, you get a lot of things delivered to your Kindle, which is just amazing.
And once it's on, it
So
stays on. You don't have a limited amount of time.
you do 2 weeks,
Oh,
2 weeks.
it comes and
But you
goes.
can, you can renew it. So if it's not a brand new book, you can renew it. So
Just like
that's a great
books, just like the old days, just like that.
exactly.
Well, I think I am going to go with the hardcover book because I like the idea of maybe going to the beach and sitting and reading it or going outside and getting my face out of a screen once in a while because I do a lot of screen stuff. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Nice to talk to you, Nancy.
You too. Have a great day.
You too.